The first sound I heard wasn't a human voice. It was the harsh, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor, drilling into my skull like a jackhammer. I blinked open my eyes, my throat feeling as dry as sandpaper. The heavy fog of anesthesia was still clinging to my brain, making the room spin in slow, sickening circles. A nurse was standing over me, but she didn't have that gentle, caring look you expect when you wake up from a major operation. She looked stern, like a debt collector who had finally tracked down a skip. "Ms. Vance, we have a serious problem," she said, her voice devoid of sympathy. "We tried to process the payment for your post-op spinal brace and the remaining facility fees. Your insurance came back terminated. We ran your credit card on file, and it was also declined." I tried to process her words through the haze. Confused and in sudden, blinding agony, I reached for my phone on the bedside table. My fingers felt thick and clumsy. The screen was blurry, but I squinted until the numbers came into focus. I saw a notification from 9:02 a.m. That was exactly 1 hour after I had gone under the knife. It was an email from my boss, Gavin. The subject line was blank. The body was short, effective immediately. "Your employment is terminated due to restructuring. Security will mail your box." The realization hit me harder than the surgery itself. I was lying in a hospital bed with a spine held together by titanium screws, facing $120,000 in immediate medical debt, and I had no job. I tried to sit up, to argue, to scream, to do something, but a bolt of fire shot up my back. I screamed in pain instead and dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, just out of reach, much like my life. My name is Morgan Vance. For 7 years, I was the director of procurement for Apex Builds, the city's top luxury construction firm. It sounds like a boring desk job, but it wasn't. I wasn't just an employee pushing paper, I was the engine that kept the machine running. I was the one who knew which city inspector could be bribed with a fresh bagel and coffee to speed up a permit. I knew which steel supplier had the best tensile strength and which one was trying to offload rusty beams. I was the fixer. Cut to 6 months ago. The founder of Apex, a good and honest man named Mr. Henderson, decided to retire. He made the fatal mistake of handing the keys to his kingdom to his son, Gavin. Gavin was a 29-year-old MBA with a caffeine addiction and a god complex the size of the skyscrapers we built. He had never swung a hammer in his life. Gavin walked into our first strategy meeting wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He didn't ask questions. He just made declarations. "We spend too much on safety and relationships," he said, tapping a laser pointer on a graph. "We need to lean out. Efficiency is the new currency." I looked around the mahogany table at the other department heads. They looked nervous. I looked at Gavin and realized the golden age of Apex Builds was over. I just didn't realize how quickly the rot would set in. 2 weeks before my surgery, the cracks started to show. I was out on a job site inspecting the foundation work because Gavin had fired the site foreman to save a few $1,000s a month. The crew was understaffed and rushing. I saw a pallet of heavy drywall shifting on a lift that wasn't secured properly. A junior intern was standing right in the drop zone, texting on his phone, completely oblivious to the ton of rock about to crush him. I didn't think. I dove. I shoved the kid out of the way just as the pallet snapped its straps. I took the hit. The impact felt like a car crash. The doctors told me I had 2 herniated discs and severe nerve compression. I needed surgery, and I needed it fast. I hobbled into Gavin's office a day later, barely able to stand even with a cane. I was terrified about the time off. Gavin smiled at me from behind his desk. It wasn't a warm smile, it was a predatory, shark-like smile. "Morgan, don't worry about a thing," he said, his voice smooth like oil. "Your family here. Take the surgery. We'll handle the leave paperwork. Just get better and come back to us." He stood up and shook my hand. I squeezed back, grateful. It was a lie. He wasn't comforting me. He was waiting for me to leave the building so he could lock me out for good. I was discharged from the hospital early because I couldn't pay for the extra recovery days. Now, I was lying on a mattress on my living room floor because I couldn't climb the stairs to my bedroom. The pain was a constant, throbbing companion. I needed to secure my health coverage. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the state benefits portal to activate COBRA. I knew it would be expensive, but I had no choice. I needed physical therapy. I typed in my social security number and waited for the loading circle. Then, red text flashed across the screen, access denied. I frowned and tried again. Same result. I called the benefits administrator, waiting on hold for 40 minutes while staring at the ceiling fan. Ms. Vance, the operator said, "You aren't eligible for COBRA." "That's impossible," I said. "I was let go due to restructuring." "That's not what your employer reported," the operator replied. "The file says you were terminated for gross misconduct, theft of company property. In cases of gross misconduct, the employer is not required to offer COBRA continuation." The phone slipped from my hand. Gavin hadn't just fired me. He had framed me for theft so he wouldn't have to pay unemployment insurance or subsidize my health coverage. He knew I had savings, but he wanted to drain them. It wasn't just a firing, it was a nuclear strike on my life. He wanted me ruined. The next few weeks were rock bottom. The pain was blinding, a white-hot knife in my spine every time I moved. Without insurance, I couldn't afford professional physical therapy. I had to rehab myself using YouTube videos, gritting my teeth and crying on my yoga mat as I tried to retrain my muscles. The medical bill started piling up in my mailbox, threatening letters printed in angry red ink. I had to sell my car, the one I had finally paid off 3 months ago, just to buy pain medication and groceries. I sat in my empty driveway, watching the tow truck take it away, feeling a piece of my independence vanish with it. One afternoon, I lay on the floor, depression setting in like a heavy blanket. I stared at the cracks in the ceiling plaster. I considered calling Gavin. Maybe if I begged, if I apologized for whatever he thought I did, he would correct the file so I could get insurance. My hand hovered over his number. I pressed call. It rang once. Then I heard his voicemail. I hung up before the beep. No. That was exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to crawl. He wanted to feel powerful. If I begged, I admitted defeat. I admitted guilt. I deleted his number from my phone. I would not give him the satisfaction. I would find another way to survive, even if it killed me. 3 weeks later, the tide began to turn. I was mobile again, walking with a sturdy cane, though I still moved slowly. I was making tea in my kitchen when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered it anyway. It was Leo, the owner of the tri-state area's biggest lumber yard. We had done business for 5 years. "Morgan, where the hell are you?" Leo shouted into the phone. He sounded furious. "I've been calling your office for 3 days. I don't work there anymore, Leo," I said quietly. "What?" Leo paused. "Since when?" "Since 3 weeks ago." "That little weasel," Leo growled. "Gavin just tried to pay for the Skyline project timber with a post-dated check. He told me you were on vacation. I told him to kick rocks until you authorized the credit release. I don't trust him, Morgan." "I trust you." The realization washed over me. Gavin hadn't told the vendors I was fired. He knew our relationships were the only thing keeping the supply chain moving. He was ghosting them, hoping they would keep shipping materials out of habit. He was lying to everyone. The supply chain wasn't just slowing down, it was crumbling. And Gavin had no idea how to fix it because he never bothered to learn how it worked. Word got out fast. Once Leo knew, everyone knew. I started getting texts from former coworkers, cryptic messages asking if I was okay or if I knew why materials weren't showing up. The Skyline project, a $50 million condo tower that was supposed to be Apex's flagship, was stalled. The custom windows hadn't arrived because the deposit wasn't paid. The concrete trucks were turning away because the grade ordered was wrong. I sat on my porch, drinking cheap herbal tea, watching my email inbox. I didn't respond to the coworkers. I just watched. I knew the project timeline better than anyone. I knew exactly when the critical inspections were scheduled. Today was the day the city inspector visited the site for the structural framing approval. I checked the time. 2 p.m. If the paperwork wasn't perfect, if the materials weren't verified, the site would get red tagged. A red tag meant a total work stoppage. It cost the company thousands of dollars an hour in fines and lost time. At 2:05 p.m., I refreshed the public city database on my tablet. There it was, in bold letters, Apex Builds, site violation, work stoppage order. Reason, failure to produce material certifications. The bleeding had started. Gavin was losing money hand over fist, and he had nobody to blame but himself. My phone rang at 4 p.m. sharp. It was a number I had deleted, but I recognized it instantly. It was Gavin. I stared at the screen, letting it ring. I took a sip of tea. It went to voicemail. He called again immediately. I let that one go to voicemail too. He called a third time. I waited until the fourth ring before sliding my thumb across the screen. Hello? I said, keeping my voice calm and uninterested. Morgan, stop playing games. Gavin shouted. He sounded panicked. I know you're there. I need the password to the vendor portal right now. You changed it before you left, didn't you? You locked us out. I didn't change anything, Gavin, I replied, leaning back in my chair. The vendor portal password resets automatically every 30 days for security compliance. It's a standard protocol. Well, what is it? He screamed. I don't know the new one. It generates a key based on an encryption algorithm. You would know that if you ever read the compliance manual I wrote for the department. It's on page 42. Just give me the code. I can't give you what I don't have. And I can't generate a new one because I don't work there. Good luck guessing the encryption key. I hung up the phone. Click. The next morning, I was woken up by aggressive banging on my apartment door. I grabbed my cane and limped to the peephole. It was Gavin. He looked terrible. His Italian suit was wrinkled, his tie was loose, and he was sweating. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 2 days. He banged again. Open up, Morgan. I know you're in there. I unlocked the door and opened it. I didn't step back. I stood my ground, leaning on my cane, calm as ice. I can sue you for withholding corporate assets, he yelled, pointing a shaking finger in my face. Give me the access codes. The investors are breathing down my neck. You fired me for theft, remember? I said softly. You put it in my file. Gross misconduct. If I give you those codes, I am accessing company systems unauthorized. That would be actual hacking. That would be a crime. I won't break the law for you, Gavin. He opened his mouth to scream, but stopped. He realized I had trapped him. He needed me to do the job he fired me for. Unless. I trailed off, letting the word hang in the air. Unless what? He snapped. Unless I'm not a terminated employee. Unless I'm something else. I stepped back and invited him in. He looked around my small apartment with disdain, but he walked into the kitchen. I sat down and slid a crisp document across the cheap laminate table. I had typed it up the night before. I am not coming back as an employee, I stated firmly. That bridge is burned. If you want the supply chain fixed, you hire me as an independent consultant. Gavin snatched the paper and read it. His eyes bulged. $300 an hour? Are you insane? That's the rate for emergency crisis management, I said. Plus a $25,000 non-refundable retainer, paid up front via cashier's check only. And one more thing, I get full, unrestricted access to all financial records to audit the supply chain for errors. I'm not giving you financial access, he spat. Then the Skyline project stays red-tagged. How much is Mr. Sterling fining you per day? 10,000? 20? Gavin's phone buzzed in his pocket. He looked at the screen. It was the investors again. He looked at me, hate burning in his eyes. He knew he was cornered. He pulled out a checkbook. I'll get the cashier's check, he muttered. But you fix this mess by tomorrow. Sign the contract first, I said, handing him a pen. He signed. The next morning, I walked back into the Apex Build's office. I wasn't wearing my usual blazer. I was wearing my bulky back brace over a simple blouse, like armor. I walked slowly with my cane, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap echoing in the silent lobby. The receptionist looked up, shocked. The staff froze. Then, slowly, smiles appeared on their faces. They knew exactly what was happening. They knew who the real boss was. Gavin met me at the elevator. He tried to steer me toward a small, dark cubicle in the corner. You can work here, he said, trying to regain some authority. Keep your head down. I stopped and shook my head. No. Consultants need privacy for sensitive audits. I can't work in the open. I walked past him, heading straight for the large glass conference room right next to his office. It was the fishbowl where the executives held their high-level meetings. I opened the door, set up my laptop, and spread my papers out on the massive table. I closed the door and looked at Gavin through the glass. I was marking my territory. I wanted him to see me every single time he looked up from his desk. I wanted to be a constant reminder of his failure. I logged into the system using my new consultant credentials. My first priority was to put out the immediate fires to keep the retainer valid. I called Leo, authorized the credit, and got the timber trucks moving. I called the concrete plant and corrected the grade order. Within 2 hours, the site was active again. But while I was working, I was also looking at the books. That was the real reason I demanded access. I started digging through the recent purchase orders. I noticed something very odd about the marble order for the Skyline penthouse units. The specs called for high-grade Italian Carrara marble, the expensive stuff. The invoice in the system said, Italian Carrara. However, I cross-referenced it with the shipping manifest. The stone wasn't coming from Italy. It wasn't even coming from a reputable importer. It was originating from a warehouse in New Jersey. I knew that warehouse. It was a distributor known for cheap composite materials, plastic mixed with stone dust. Gavin was billing the client for luxury stone, charging them top dollar, but he was buying and installing plastic knockoffs. The profit margin on that scam was huge. I needed to clear my name regarding the gross misconduct charge. I couldn't let that stain stay on my record. I waited until Gavin left for his 2-hour lunch break. I knew he kept his office door unlocked because he was arrogant. I walked in, claiming I needed to look for a physical file. I saw a laptop sitting on his desk. It wasn't his sleek executive model. It was a standard-issue company laptop. The screen was open, running a fantasy football league dashboard. I moved closer. I recognized the stickers on the lid, a faded safety sticker I had put there myself. It was my old work laptop. The one he claimed I had stolen. The one he filed a police report about to deny my benefits. He hadn't even wiped it. He had just taken it for his own personal use to play games at work. I pulled out my phone. I snapped a clear photo of the serial number on the back of the machine. Then I took a photo of the screen showing his personal login and the Fantasy Football League open in the browser. I had proof. The theft was completely debunked. He was using the stolen property right in front of everyone. Later that afternoon, the city inspector returned to the site to lift the red tag. I decided to be there. I drove over, struggling out of my car with my cane. The inspector, a gruff man named Dave, saw me and visibly relaxed. Thank God, Dave said, taking off his hard hat to wipe his brow. Someone who actually knows how to read a blueprint. I was about to shut this whole circus down permanently. I walked him through the corrections. I showed him the new material certs. I fixed the paperwork issues in 10 minutes, something Gavin hadn't been able to do in a week. Dave signed the release form, but then he leaned in close, lowering his voice. Be careful, Morgan, he warned. I'm looking at the electrical permits. The subcontractor Gavin hired, Budget Electric, they aren't licensed in this state for high-rise work. I'm letting it slide for 24 hours because I trust you, but you need to fix it. If the fire marshal sees that, he'll arrest someone. I felt a chill. Unlicensed electricians on a high-rise? That wasn't just cutting corners, that was dangerous. The rot was deeper than just fake marble. Gavin was risking lives to save money. I went back to the office with a plan. I needed him on record. I sat in the glass conference room and composed an email to Gavin. I made it sound official and boring. Subject, vendor verification. Please confirm you personally authorized the switch to Budget Electric and to Jersey Stone for the Skyline project. I need to update the compliance logs for the audit. I hit send and watched him through the glass. He was on his phone, looking bored. He saw the email pop up. He didn't check the licenses. He didn't call the vendors. He was lazy. He just wanted the annoyance to go away. He typed a reply on his phone. My inbox pinged 30 seconds later. Yes, I authorized it. Stop wasting time on admin and get the materials released. We need to catch up on the schedule. I smiled. He had just admitted to fraud and negligence in writing. He confirmed he knew about the vendors. He couldn't blame a subordinate later. He had signed his own confession. I forwarded the email to my personal secure server immediately. The end of the week arrived. It was time to submit my first invoice. I typed it up carefully. Billable hours, 40 hours at $300 per hour equals $12,000. Then, under a line item labeled Administrative Expenses, I typed $25,000. Total due, $37,000. I walked into Gavin's office and placed it on his desk. He glanced at it and choked on his coffee. What is this? He demanded, slamming his hand on the paper. 25 grand for expenses? You haven't bought anything. Read the contract, Gavin, I said calmly. Section 4, consultant shall be reimbursed for all costs incurred due to previous administrative errors by the client. So, canceling my insurance while I was in surgery was an administrative error, Gavin. That $25,000 covers the deductible and the immediate bills I had to pay out of pocket because you lied to the insurance company. That's the cost of my surgery. He turned purple. He looked like he was going to throw me out. But he stopped. He looked at the red tag release form on his desk. He knew he couldn't fire me again. He needed me. He grit his teeth so hard I thought they would crack. He pulled out the checkbook and signed the check. Now that I had my money, I dug deeper into the Jersey Stone Shell Company. I looked up the business registration online. It was a generic LLC registered to a P.O. box in Trenton. I paid a small fee to pull the articles of incorporation. The registered agent was a man named Brad Wilson. The name sounded familiar. I went to Gavin's social media. I scrolled back 5 years to his college days. There it was. A photo of Gavin at a fraternity party, his arm around a guy holding a red Solo cup. The caption read, "Me and my boy Brad running the yard." Brad was Gavin's college roommate. It all clicked. Gavin wasn't just buying cheap stone to save the company money. He was paying his friend Brad 20% over market rate for the fake stone. Brad was likely kicking back half the profit to Gavin. They were splitting the difference. It was classic embezzlement. He was stealing from his own father's company. Gavin started to realize he was losing control of the office. The staff was coming to me for answers, ignoring him. He decided to fight back dirty. He started a rumor. He told the project managers that I was a corporate spy sent by the bank to liquidate the company. He said I was there to cut their jobs. He tried to turn the team against me. I heard the whispers by the water cooler. I didn't get angry. I held a training session for the junior staff during lunch. I want to show you all how to use the new payroll system, I announced. I projected the screen. I showed them how to access the overtime logs that Gavin had hidden in a subfolder. If you look here, I said, pointing to the screen, you'll see that the hours you worked last month weren't flagged for payment. Let's fix that. I helped them file for 3 months of back pay that Gavin had accidentally withheld from them. The mood in the room shifted instantly. They realized I wasn't the enemy. I was Robin Hood. The staff didn't turn on me, they formed a protective ring around me. The stakes suddenly got much higher. Mr. Sterling, the billionaire developer behind the Skyline project, called the office. He was a terrifying man who chewed glass for breakfast. He had heard rumors about cheap materials being used on his luxury tower. He demanded a surprise site walk the next morning. Gavin went into a full-blown panic attack. He paced around his office, hyperventilating. He called me in. "Morgan, you have to help me," he begged, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You have to distract him. Don't let him look closely at the penthouse floors. If he sees the stone, he'll pull the contract. We'll go bankrupt." "I can't control where he looks, Gavin," I said. "Just do something," he screamed. "You're the consultant." "Consult." "Okay," I said. "I'll handle the walkthrough." He slumped in his chair, relieved. He thought I was going to cover for him. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning, the site walk began. Mr. Sterling wore a custom hard hat and an expensive suit. He walked through the lobby, inspecting the finishes. He was sharp. He noticed everything. We took the elevator up to the penthouse. Sterling walked into the master bathroom. The floor was covered in the Jersey stone. It looked white and shiny, but it lacked the depth of real marble. Sterling knelt down. He touched the floor with the back of his hand. He frowned. "This feels warm," he said. "Real stone is cold to the touch. It holds temperature." He stood up and looked directly at me. "Is this Carrara marble, Ms. Vance?" Gavin was standing behind Sterling, waving his hands frantically at me, mouthing the word, "Yes." I looked at Gavin. Then I looked back at Sterling. "Mr. Sterling," I said clearly, "my scope as a consultant is limited to processing orders authorized by the CEO. I cannot verify material authenticity, only that I ordered exactly what Gavin specified." I pulled out my tablet. I opened the email from Chapter 15. I handed it to Sterling. "This is the authorization for the material change." Sterling read the email. His face went dark red. He didn't scream. He just looked at Gavin with pure disgust. "I'm pulling the contract," Sterling said quietly. "My lawyers will be in touch." He stormed out. Gavin exploded. He cornered me in the construction trailer 5 minutes later. He screamed, picking up a hard hat and throwing it against the wall. It cracked loudly. "You set me up," he shrieked. "You ruined everything." I didn't flinch. I had my hand in my pocket. My phone was recording. "I didn't set you up, Gavin," I said, my voice steady. "I followed your written orders." "Are you telling me I should have lied to the client? Are you asking me to commit fraud?" "I don't care if you lie." Gavin screamed, his voice cracking. "I care if we get paid. You fix the books. You make it look like real stone." "That sounds like a threat, Gavin." "It is a threat. Fix it or I'll destroy you." I stopped the recording. I had everything I needed. I left the site and made a phone call. I called the chairman of the board, Mr. Abernathy. He was Gavin's father's old business partner, a man of strict ethics. Mr. Abernathy, I said. We have a solvency issue at Apex. You need to come in tomorrow morning. Bring the full board. Is it that bad? He asked. It's worse, I replied. I went back to the office and walked into Gavin's room. He was sitting with his head in his hands. The board is coming tomorrow, I told him. He looked up, terrified. Don't worry, I lied. I told them we need to approve a rescue package. I negotiated a plan to save the contract. They just need to sign off on it. Gavin slumped, relief washing over him again. He actually believed me. He thought I had saved him. Okay, he breathed. Okay. Good work, Morgan. He walked into the meeting the next day with a smug grin, thinking he had survived. The boardroom was tense. 6 older men in gray suits sat around the long table. Gavin sat at the head, looking confident. I stood at the projector screen. Gentlemen, Gavin started, Morgan has prepared a report on our minor supply chain hiccups. But we have a solution. I stepped forward. I didn't smile. I'm afraid that's not accurate, I said. I dimmed the lights. I clicked the remote. Slide 1 appeared. It wasn't a supply chain graph. It was a side-by-side comparison. On the left was the invoice for the fake stone from Jersey Stone LLC. On the right was the billing statement sent to Mr. Sterling for Premium Italian Carrara. Gentlemen, I said, we aren't having supply chain hiccups. We are committing grand larceny against our largest client. The difference in cost is pocketed by a shell company. The board members gasped. Mr. Abernathy stood up. What is this? Gavin stood up, slamming his hands on the table. She's lying, he shouted, pointing at me. She's a disgruntled employee. I fired her for theft. She's trying to frame me. I clicked the remote. Slide 2 appeared. It was the photo of my stolen laptop sitting on Gavin's desk, running fantasy football. This is the stolen property, I said. I clicked again. Slide 3. The email firing me at 9:02 a.m. This is the timestamp of my termination. I was under anesthesia. I clicked again. Slide 4. An audio file icon. I pressed play. Gavin's voice filled the room, loud and clear. I don't care if you lie. I care if we get paid. Fix the books. The room went deadly silent. Gavin looked like a ghost. I looked Mr. Abernathy in the eye. He fired me while I was being cut open to save $1,500 in insurance premiums. A man that cheap and that cruel didn't just steal my insurance. He stole $4 million from you through a shell company in New Jersey run by his college roommate. Mr. Abernathy looked at Gavin. There was no pity in his eyes, only cold fury. You're done, Abernathy said. Security. 2 large guards stepped in. Gavin started crying. He actually started sobbing, calling out for his dad. It was pathetic. They escorted him out of the building. The board turned to me. Morgan, Abernathy said. We need a CEO. Someone who knows the business. The job is yours. He slid an offer letter across the table. It was a lot of money. I looked at the contract. Then I looked at the toxic room, the gray suits, the legacy of Gavin's mess. I picked up the offer and tore it in half. I'm expensive, gentlemen, I said. And I don't work for companies that let this happen to their people. 2 months later, I walked into my own office. The sign on the door read, Vance Logistics. My phone rang. It was Mr. Sterling. Morgan, he said. I fired Apex. They're sinking. I want you to run the Skyline project directly. I smiled, leaning back in a chair that finally supported my healed spine. I'd be happy to, Mr. Sterling, I said. But my rate just went up.